Hello everyone and welcome to Chapter 6, which is over strategic management, which is kind of a follow-up to our previous chapter, Chapter 5, which is over planning. Now in this chapter over strategic management, we will describe strategic management and strategic planning and why they're important in today's business. It goes through the 5 steps in the strategic management process, and the chapter will show how grand strategy is developed using 2 strategic planning tools, the SWOT analysis and forecasting. Next in the chapter, we'll describe how strategy is formulated using such techniques as Porter's 4 competitive strategies, single product versus diversification strategies, and competitive intelligence. Finally, the chapter will conclude on how it shows strategy is carried out and controlled. As we look at how our chapter is broken up into 5 parts, we will look at how the first part of chapter 6 is over the dynamics of strategic planning. And after reading this, you should be able to answer, am I really managing if I don't have a strategy? The second part, which is the strategic management process, you should be able to answer, what's the 5-step recipe for strategic management process? After reading the third section of Chapter 6, which is over establishing the grand strategy, you should be able to answer the major question of how can competitive intelligence, SWOT, and forecasting help me establish my overall strategy. You then move on to formulating the strategy, which is part 6.4, and you should be able to answer the question, how can 4 techniques, Porter's competitive forces, competitive strategies, diversification and synergy, and the BCG matrix help me formulate strategy. Then you will conclude the chapter in part 6.5, which is over implementing and controlling strategy, essentially execution. And you should be able to answer the question after reading that, how does the effective execution help managers during the strategic management process? So there's a look at chapter 6 over strategic management. Let's go ahead and jump in and cover some of that material now. Let's take a look at the first part over the dynamics of strategic planning. And first talk about a business plan. Business plans are important documents that outline a firm's goals, the strategy for achieving those goals, and the standards for measuring its success. Now, every organization needs to have that big picture about where it's going in the future and how it's going to get there. Now, these are matters of strategy, strategic management, and strategic planning. Strategy is a large-scale action plan that sets the direction for an organization. Now, strategy cannot be stagnant. Strategy needs to be revised from time to time because of fast-changing conditions in the business environment. Now, strategic management is a process that involves managers from all parts of the organization in the formulation and implementation of strategies and strategic goals. And because middle managers are the ones who will actually implement those strategies from the top management, they should also be part of to help formulate those goals. Strategic planning determines not only the organization's long-term goals, but also the ways in which the organization should achieve those goals. So you can think of strategic planning as that determines where an organization is going over the next year or more, and how it's going to get there, and how it'll know if it got there or if it didn't. Now let's answer the question of why strategic management and strategic planning are important. First of all, it provides direction and momentum. Strategic planning helps people focus on the most critical problems, choices, and opportunities in the organization. It can also help create teamwork, promote learning, and build commitment to the organization. Now, a poor plan can send an organization in the wrong direction. We definitely want to avoid that as managers. Next, we can encourage new ideas. Strategic planning encourages new ideas by stressing the importance of innovation in achieving the long-range success that we all strive for. Lastly, developing a sustainable competitive advantage. Obviously, we know having the competitive advantage is critical in business. And the way that we do this is we're able to sustain a competitive advantage occurs by occurring this when an organization is able to get and stay ahead in 4 different areas. Being responsive to our customers, as they are our primary focus, as we all know. Innovation, quality, and of course our overall effectiveness. Alright, what is an effective strategy? Let me go back to our Harvard Business School professor Michael Porter. And according to Porter, strategic positioning attempts to achieve sustainable competitive advantage by preserving what is distinctive about a company. Now what this means is performing different activities from rivals or performing similar activities of those rivals but doing them in different ways. Now there are three key principles underlying strategic positioning. The first of which is strategy is the creation of unique and valuable position. So strategic position emerges from three sources here with this principle. From serving the few needs of many customers, from serving the broad needs of just a few select customers, and lastly, the third source is from serving the broad needs of many customers. The second key principle for underlying strategic positioning is strategy requires trade-offs in competing. A company has to choose not only what strategy to follow, but what strategy not to follow as well. And the third key principle underlying strategic positioning is strategy involves creating a fit among activities. And fit has to do with the ways a company activities interact and reinforce one another. We will now move into the next part of the chapter, which covers the 5 steps of the strategic management process. The first step in the 5-step strategic management process is the establish the mission and vision. And in this, the mission, if you recall, is the organization's purpose or reason for being in existence. And we express this in a mission statement. Now, an organization's vision is the long-term goal described what it becomes. This should be very familiar to you as we covered this in Chapter 5 as well. And it is expressed in a vision statement which describes its long-term direction and its strategic intent. So we have the organization's vision, which is its long-term goal, and that is expressed in a vision statement which describes its long-term direction and its strategic intent in the business. Now we have to have a means of translating this broad mission and vision statements into an overall grand strategy. That's how the organization's mission is to be accomplished. And that is in step 2, establishing the grand strategy. Now there are 3 common grand strategies. You have the growth strategy, which involves expansion, such as in sales, revenues, market share, which we've talked about in the previous chapter. Then we have the stability strategy, which involves little or no significant change. And then we have the defensive strategy, or be called the retrenchment strategy, which involves a reduction in the overall organization's efforts. Now we have 2 tools available to us that a company can use to establish a grand strategy, and those are the SWOT analysis and forecasting. Step 3 is the formulating strategic plans. Strategy formulation is the process of choosing among different strategies and altering them to fit your organization's needs. Now one technique to do this is in Porter's competitive forces and strategies. We'll cover that a little more in detail further on here in Chapter 6 lesson. So we'll look at step 4 here, which is to carry out the strategic plan. So putting strategic plans into effect is strategy implementation. And implementation may mean overcoming resistance by those who feel threatened by the strategy. As we all know, some people tend to just naturally resist any type of change. And lastly, we see step 5, which is to maintain strategic control. We call this the feedback loop. Now, the strategic control consists of monitoring the execution of strategy and making adjustments if they're necessary. Managers need control systems to monitor progress, and they must take corrective action as they see fit. Corrective action constitutes a feedback loop. To keep a plan on track, managers should do the following. We should engage people in clarifying what your group hopes to accomplish. Keep our planning simple. We should stay focused on the important things. We should keep moving forward toward the vision of the future and adjust the plan as needed based on different factors. And I know that is easier said than done, but if you can, as managers, just keep those 4 parts in mind as you are working on a plan, and just keeping those in mind might help you keep that plan on track. That's just a very good management practice. Engage your people, keep the plan simple, stay focused on those things that are most important, and keep moving forward toward the vision of the future and adjust as you see needed.